I introduce our special guest today, do not forget to like, comment, and share the video, but above all, subscribe to our channel. And thank you so much for your overwhelming response to the previous editions of Author Talks. Now, coming to our guest today, she is none other than Linda S. Gunther. Linda is an American author who resides on the coast of Northern California. Linda has authored 6 suspense novels. Besides Suspense, her novels are also filled with complex family relationships as well as the challenges of falling in love amid hair-raising, intense situations. In addition to this, Linda has also written 3 illustrated children's books. So welcome, Linda, to the Literary Yard.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So that everyone would be, keen to know from you is that how and why did you get into writing suspense novels in the first place? I know you've been facing this question for quite some time, but we are really interested in knowing why suspense novels.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know people ask me, what question should I ask you? And this is one of the questions, but I never really know the answer. Okay, so I
believe it's quite difficult for all the authors when it comes to writing, because most of the times it starts all of a sudden and you don't realize and you're an author.
Right. I mean, it's a weird thing, but I think you may not know this, but I used to be, for all my professional career, I was in human resources and traveled the world doing all kinds of mergers and acquisitions and all kinds of stuff like that. And I did a lot of training and development. And when I was doing training and development, I think I have developed like 40 workshops, probably at least 40 workshops. That's from my head, right? From my learning, from my working with people. Anyway, in these workshops, what I love to do is create case studies, right? So I write like 2 pages about an HR representative who has a really bad week. And then I have everybody kind of solve, okay, what should she do? How does she handle this situation? What should she do here? What should she do there? Anyway, the thing was, I've been writing a long time, these little vignettes. And then I was also leader of corporate employee communications, right? So I was writing newsletters and stuff like that. Then I took a trip in 1997, I think, on my own to Havana, Cuba.
Okay.
And I just went on my own because nobody would go with me because we're not supposed to go. But, I didn't care. So I went and I spent like 3 weeks and I met people. I met Cubans. I went to their house. I met people from Europe who are allowed to go to Cuba, no problem. I came back. And you're not going to believe this, but I went to a class with the University of California on how to write a screenplay. Wow. I didn't know what I was doing. And in 6 weeks with a fantastic teacher, I wrote a screenplay called 10 Steps from the Hotel Inglaterra, which is one of the hotels I was staying at.
Okay.
And it became kind of an adventure for a woman. It was fictional, but what I did was I implanted real things in the story that really happened to me, not only in Havana, but in my early childhood life. I implanted them in there. I wrote the screenplay, finished that, went back to my job, forgot about all this writing stuff. And then in 2015, I quit Silicon Valley and decided to write my first novel. And guess what it was? It was taking the screenplay and turning it into, I don't have it here, but turning it into a novel.
Okay.
And, that's how I got listen, I thought I was just going to write one thing. That's it, right? I was just going to write this one novel, whatever. maybe sell the screenplay and the novel to Hollywood. I didn't know what I was doing, and I did. I haven't, but and that was it. And then all of a sudden, I got the bug to I had another idea about a female veterinarian who lives in San Francisco. And then I wrote this next novel, Endangered Witness, trying to find it. And it took place in San Francisco. A woman sees a murder, or what she thinks is a murder, from a hotel window when she's half drunk on a date. With a new boyfriend that she's not that interested in.
How do you encounter these thoughts all of a sudden and able to sort of weave into stories?
Well, that was in San Francisco. That's not that far from me, but I was on a weekend with my boyfriend. Actually, when I got that, he became my husband, but I think we weren't married then, I think, as I recall. So
Okay.
usually what I like to do is travel, right? I just came back from Australia, New Zealand, and Tahiti.
Okay.
Because when you travel, you see all these different pictures and vignettes, interactions, places, colors, just things that you're not used to seeing. And, I find them really stimulating. Like I was on a cruise ship, and I was with my husband then, and I got this idea to write Lost in the Wake.
Wow.
About people, young girls disappearing from a cruise ship with no explanation.
Okay.
And I worked the story around that and situated it in Europe near Gibraltar, with a ship that was crossing the ocean. So I don't know, I just get ideas.
Somehow get into your novels automatically and they become these suspense stories at the end of the day.
I think writing it is also, it's a cathartic, therapeutic process, right? For us, I think it really is. I have a lot of background that features a troubled, difficult childhood growing up in the Bronx.
Okay.
And I think now I'm writing a memoir about that, stories about that.
Okay.
And it's really, I think, therapeutic as well for the writer, for any writer.
Interesting. So the overall themes and messages that you focus in your novels, you take them socially, as you said, or sometime they are also out of the world. You want to take readers on a ride, which is exotic or beyond this world as well.
Yeah, and sometimes I write about things that are in my own backyard. My last novel that I wrote is called Death is a Great Disguiser, and it actually takes place right here in Santa Cruz County. So just to clarify for me, I'm not only writing about when I travel to exotic places, but I have a novel also set in Tahiti and Scotland, but I also like to write about the ordinary things that happen to people and their family relationships, things that stress them, and then they're gnawing at them inside, how they're handling something in their family. Could be a death, it could be anything.
Anything dramatic, of course.
And then something really big happens where they are pulled in and get involved, like a murder, like some difficult situation. And then they're dealing not only with the difficult situation, in this case, Death is a Great Disguiser, this ex-cop is being accused of murdering a young girl.
Yeah.
That he does know who she is, but he wasn't really involved. So he has to deal with this terrible situation that's happening, how to prove his innocence. but he's also dealing with family relationships that are difficult with his daughter, ex-wife, various other things. So it's sort of like everything comes colliding in at one point in time. And it's fascinating to me how people make different choices when those kinds of things happen. They have the stress of this, the stress of that, and they have to sort of swim through that. I do have to
Interesting.
say,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So it's really the human condition,
Mhm.
I think, that I'm writing about.
Are there any projects ongoing with you as of now, currently, that you're working on? Another suspense novel or a children's book?
Well, what's happened to me in the last 18 months is I got hooked up with a wonderful professor
Mm-hmm.
from a college here in California. And I
Mm-hmm.
started going to his webinars, and he encouraged me to write short stories.
Okay.
So my favorite author of short stories is Raymond Carver. I love Raymond Carver. He's simple, down home, down to earth, tells it like it is. There's not a lot of frills and fluff, but it's riveting. So
Right.
I've been studying Raymond Carver, and I started writing short stories and submitting them. The professor made me submit my stories to literary journals. I didn't really want to.
Okay.
And bam, all of a sudden, now I have 35, maybe more, short stories published in the various literary journals in the last 18 months. So, I guess the message there is, as a writer, it's so good to try new things. I wrote novels,
Absolutely.
I write children's books, but I really was not interested in writing short stories. And
Yeah,
then,
somehow you are connected to the audience from different geographies and all walks of life. These short stories keep you connected to the audience of all kind. Plus, you get response in real time, often through
there you
such
go.
engagements.
You just said, you write a novel, you put it out there, you have a nice little following, but it's not huge, but you have a good following. People are waiting for your
Right.
next book. But you really don't hear a lot of feedback, right? It takes a while.
Exactly.
You write a short story and you put it in a literary journal, people are writing comments, you put it on Facebook, Instagram, people are like, oh my God, Linda, I didn't know you could write. It's amazing. You get feedback that really keeps you running. Okay, I'm going to write another one. So you're right. That's the key to writing short stories, and of course poetry. I've also been encouraged to write poetry. I've written poetry and had it published in several journals, but
Mhm.
I realized one thing. I like writing stories, novels, memoir, prose.
Mhm.
That's my gift. So I'm going to stay focused, on that.
So you're more driven to prosaic form of writing rather than poetic or versical form of writing. So interesting. Everybody has his or her sweet spot that way, and
Yeah.
it's usually very good to accept your sweet spot and work in that direction and perfect your
Yeah.
skills that way.
Yeah. And like you might have several sweet spots, may not only be one, but I guess I don't want to hang out with something I don't feel passion for. I feel
Okay.
a passion for writing stories, whether memoir or fictional. I have to say, one thing happened to me the other day. I was walking on the beach near where I live,
Mhm.
and one thing that I would offer writers is to listen to other people's conversations, and be open to using them in stories. I have to tell you this because I was walking down the beach and I was thinking, oh, I'm writing this memoir. It's really heavy duty, blah, blah, blah. I wish I could just take a break and write something different, but I don't have any ideas, right? I have no idea. My brain is blank. So I'm walking down the beach and this couple walks by me and the woman says, yeah. And the doctor opened up the cast and maggots came crawling out. Maggots. So, and they walk by and I'm like, oh my, it was so nauseating, right?
Exactly.
Like who would say that?
Right.
So I went home and I started the story with that dialogue line. And then I
Sometimes these random lines, random thoughts, they add a lot of flavor to your storytelling than the usual that a writer thinks is best for the story or the novel.
I was like crazed. I had to use it right away. And then I wrote a short story that was like 700 words about this married couple called Lydia and Albert. And now, of course, I'm, editing and crafting it. But isn't that something that you could walk down the street over here something and then really incorporate it into something that's pretty cool?
I think that's the beauty of writing, plus a quality of an intelligent writer who picks up his or his dialogues or her dialogues from day to day life. So I think this is a perfect example in that way.
I have to say that over the last 5 serious years of writing, writing novels, stories, whatever, children's books, I have learned so much that's new that, I never learned before. It really helps to belong to critique groups and writers associations and constantly pick up new things. I didn't realize how much was out there that I didn't know.
Right. And plus, I have one more question to you. You write both suspense as well as children's books. So, what is your favorite genres between these two? Plus, when you write a suspense novel or a suspense fiction, there is some sort of labeling that happens to all kinds of authors. If you're writing your first children's book, you would always be expected to write next children's book rather than a suspense novel, and same happens vice versa. So, how do you see? How do you play between the two? And I mean, if you can explain this.
Wow. I go with my heart.
Okay.
I go with where my heart and brain lead me next without feeling obligated to write another one of something. I have to admit that now, after writing these suspense novels, I'm now dovetailing because one of my writing coaches said, Linda, when you write memoir, it's magic.
Right.
And I'm like, really? I don't think so. I like writing suspense. I mean, they're pretty good. And she's like, they're really good. But when you write your memoir stories about growing your childhood in the Bronx in New York City, it's like a whole other dimension. So I'm be honest, right now, I'm sort of leaving the suspense novels. I write some suspense short stories still, right?
Right.
But I'm sort of leaving them and going into this new wonderland of writing about what really happened, and with your, whenever you're writing nonfiction, of course, you're probably an expert at this. You're not going to remember every word that happened in some conversation when you were 10, right? So
Definitely.
you're doing creative nonfiction all the time. You're blending your learning from fiction, dialogue, setting, everything with your memories. it's sort of a dovetailing. So now my thrill in writing these suspense novels has transitioned for now
Mhm.
into really focusing on writing memoir. So I'm creating a book of these stories, and I'm calling it A Bronx Girl growing up in the 60s, in the 1960s in the Bronx.
I was
And
coming to that, you have suddenly started focusing on your life and
yeah,
just universalizing those situations to everyone's around, or the readers, your readers particularly. So why so?
say that again. Why?
Why do you think that, or not think, or why are you bringing your this thing, personal life,
Yeah.
yeah, into your
Um,
stories?
you know
Although I
what?
find it really interesting, the way you write and the way you project your life experiences, those incidents that took place, they look as if they are happening next to us, or they have happened somewhere with us also in the past, or they keep happening to all of us.
Yes. And that's what I'm finding out as I write these memoir stories. Of course, I get feedback from all the friends that I used to have, many friends in New York City that I haven't really seen or been with for quite a while. And they're like, they say, Linda, I forgot about that. And you got it, you hit it right on the mark. I felt it. That's what I'm looking for. Success to me is people who read it and go, wow, but you're right, Onkar. It's not only people that I grew up in the Bronx. I'm hearing from other people that don't know anything about New York City or whatever. They grew up in Chicago, they grew up in Canada, right? Somewhere in Canada. But they're really feeling like the emotions of a little girl and how she was feeling and pulled in this direction, pulled in that direction. It's kind of universal.
Right.
We've all had we've all had weird things happen to us as a child, and we sort of bury it. There's one other thing. I am the last one left in my family. I
Okay.
know that sounds crazy,
Sorry to
but
hear that.
I am, right? I mean, my brother's passed, my sister's passed,
Mhm.
various reasons. My mother, grandmother, father, everybody really is gone. And I have grandchildren and, my son, and I'm kind of writing so that I leave what happened, the stories behind. Or
Right.
you probably have a lot of people say that, but I'm sort of
I have
memorializing.
heard one thing, from a friend of mine. He often said that, an author particularly is always on a journey backwards. He always
Ooh,
looks into his or her life, and is able to sort of craft those incidents or situations or circumstances in such a way that everyone feels that they are situations that has happened to them. So in a way, this journey backwards is something very important to most of the writers who are engaged in sort of, who keep bringing their life experiences into the stories they write.
mm,
In your example, you have done this in your short stories.
yeah, yeah. So are they, when you interview other writers, do you find, or you talk to them, do you find that they're incorporating their own stuff, from going backwards into other, like writing fiction? I mean, do they, because I find myself implanting things that really happened to me in my novel, in my novels. And
Right.
most people don't know that, right? But occasionally someone will say, did that really happen to you? And I'm like, So do you find other authors doing that in their fiction writing as well?
Very much. Many of them say this. And, when it's the same question as you asked, and that most of the readers feel surprised that this has really happened to you, or how you have, sort of thought about this instance. So that's a natural kind of reaction from readers for them, but most of them do this. And personally, I also begin my stories or my poems, from my past experiences, and try to sort of transition those experiences into modern kind of a circumstance or situation around. That
Right,
happens
right.
quite a bit. Yeah,
I think it also makes whatever you're writing come alive off the page,
exactly.
right? It gives it legs rather than just, okay, here's a story, here's a character I made up. But if you really incorporate nuggets of your real life, it just adds a pizzazz to the story.
Right.
And right now, I don't know if you know this, but because I've learned so much, so many new things, I'm also writing a blog on my website, and it's now in week 10.
Okay.
So I don't know if I told you that, or, it's
I think you
something.
mentioned it briefly, so please elaborate.
Yeah. So each week I have a blog post. It's called Write Bites.
Mhm.
Kind of cute, Write Bites. And each week is a new bite, about 400, 500 words about a topic. So it might be on backstory and flashbacks, how to use them. It
Okay.
could be on how to develop, three-dimensional characters
Mhm.
rather than,
I think
just a
that's a
character.
very good advice to budding authors or aspiring writers. And I like to tell my viewers that there will be a link to Linda's website
Thank
below this video, so they can easily go to that website.
you.
One
So
last
it,
question, Linda, I have for
sure,
you is,
sure.
a writer doesn't become a writer by simply writing something, but a writing is a constant process. You have to look at a piece of writing again and again, revisit the incidents, revisit the storyline that you have written, and try different ways to narrate your story. So what's the real advice for the authors, how they can really perfect this art of writing, plus how they can make their stories and poetry or whatever piece of writing they are doing, make that writing really well.
Wow. Okay. So that's like a double barrel question, right? Um, yeah, I think what happened to me, and it probably doesn't happen to everyone. Sorry, the sun is really coming in here. Is that for some reason I have become enthusiastic about editing. Well,
Mhm.
what do I mean? I mean, I really enjoy it. And I think when I first started writing, it was a pain in the neck. And I got I've got other people to edit and all that. And I still do that, of course.
Mhm.
But when you go back to your story and, each time you go back and you change just, as this happened to you, I changed just a few words,
Mhm.
just a few each time I go back. And I don't know, it feels like exponentially the story has gotten uh,
So
40,
new
50%
elevation,
better, right? It's
right?
it's just strange to me. I mean, it's a weird feeling to really just edit 5, 6 words in your manuscript of, let's say, a short story. And wham, it just changes it so miraculously, makes it so much better. So that's the proof. That's the proof that
Right.
editing, going back numerous times, not, some people work on stories for 10 years. That's not going to
It
be
can be
me.
too much. Over editing, I would say.
I used to teach project management. No, you're not going to do that. You need to keep going back and making it better. Even Ankar, maybe you already know this from me, but even after I publish something, I've worked on it a lot. I get it published, and then I look at it and I go, oh crap, I need to change that word. Most of the time I'll go back to the editor and say, oh, I'm so sorry, but can you change that little word?
I see a reflection of myself in you in that way.
You do it too?
Yeah,
You do.
quite
So,
often.
I want it to be as good as it can get. And so I have pleasure when I make something better. You have pleasure when you make something better.
That's right.
And you get feedback from other people. You get feedback, right? I'm in a critique group for 5 years, right? You get feedback, and some of it you're like, what? No, that's not, you don't say that to the critique. But that, no. And then other things you get, and you make that one change they suggested, and click, it's so much better. So, you really, I think, need to be use your evaluative side, your own critique side
To
when
an
you're
extent possible, at least. Not wait till 10 years, because 10 years is a very long time.
right.
There are
And
exceptions, of course.
okay, maybe I'm trying to think of some, but okay. Maybe I know you hear people get interviewed who are authors, and they say, oh, that took me 20 years to write.
Maybe
And
those
I'm
authors are
thinking,
busy doing some other stuff alongside, so they didn't find the time to, finish the
yeah,
work.
of
Right.
course.
So with this, Linda, thank you so much for being part of Author Talks, and I really enjoyed conversing with you. I hope readers or viewers also did. And I would like to appeal to our viewers once again. Please like, comment, and share the video. Plus,
Uh,
also subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you, Ankar. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.